Today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, we do a comparison between the Epiphone Les Paul Special Satin E1 and the Gibson Les Paul Special Tribute. And I want to very quickly address the first elephant in the room, and that is, I'm in Edmonton, it is August, it is hot out, and I'm looking like an idiot because I'm wearing a tank top. It's comfortable, and it's hot. So I'm sorry, and we'll try not to have any nip slips. And second elephant in the room here, I know what the comments are going to be. Whenever you compare Epiphone to Gibson, you usually get 3 comments. Number 1, Epiphone is better than a Gibson, way better. Gibson's way more money, Epiphone, yay. And the second one is Gibson, way better. Oh man, I like spending more money. And Chinese Epiphone, they're custom shops in China. And then number 3 is the dummy in the background that just goes, they both suck. Let's just give honest opinions here rather than, showing affiliation. And as always, for comparisons, it's great watching YouTube videos. You get to see a different perspective on, different guitars and stuff like that. And you get to hear like basic sound differences. Of course, albeit that's in someone else's hand. Sound is always part of the equation. I think that's usually about 30% of the equation. The rest of the 70, well, okay, 65, because looks are pretty 5%, right? The rest of the equation is how it actually feels to you. So don't let, how I make a certain guitar sound or how it may look with my, stupid tank top on here, be your decision as to why you're buying one of these guitars. Go play them for yourself. It's best to see how you bond with whatever guitar, how your hands feel with it, the different weights and stuff like that. That's really going to be the best way to make the decision on what guitar to buy. But I do have 5 sound samples for you today, the first of which is clean with all 3 pickup positions. And then because it is this channel, we do end with full-on metal. All right, there you go. There are the 5 sound samples for the comparison between the most affordable Epiphone Les Paul with humbuckers and the most affordable Gibson Les Paul, again with humbuckers. Of course, the sound samples really aren't the whole thing with the comparison. What we're gonna do now, we'll talk about the specs for each, so the similarities and differences, and then I'll talk about each guitar individually. All right, spec-wise, these are Les Paul Specials. So Specials and Juniors are slab bodies. So looking at things here, I'm gonna flip it this way so I can look at it. The Gibson is millimeters thicker. Millimeters, so not a whole bunch, but it is a little bit thicker than the Epiphone. The Gibson here is a mahogany body, whereas this is a poplar body. We have satin nitro here, which you can feel a lot more of the grain of the wood. Whereas this is just like a regular satin finish where it's definitely a lot smoother. It's not like paper smooth, but it is rather smooth. Moving on to the necks, we have a set neck on the Gibson, and it's also a maple neck that has the rounded neck profile. So it's not the 50s, it's not baseball bat, it's like in between, I would say baseball bat and slim taper. So, you know, comparison. So it's in between the thickest and the thinnest. The Epiphone has a non-intrusive bolt-on mahogany neck that is slim taper, but it's, you either get a C profile or a D profile. This particular one is D profile. It gives, so it's a little thicker than the slim taper neck, so it gives it a little more sturdiness and stability to the neck. Looking at the fretboards, the Gibson has a rosewood fretboard, whereas the Epiphone has a rosewood family fretboard. So you're either going to be looking at Laurel or possibly Granadillo, I don't think though, or you're going to be looking at Akame. This particular fretboard here is Akame, although I don't know if it's part of the rosewood family, but Epiphone will just put rosewood because it's just part of the rosewood family. Both also have the dot inlays. Looking at the headstock, both have the silk-screened logo with the silk-screened Les Paul special to it. And then we look at the tuners. The Gibson has the Gibson branded vintage style, vintage deluxe tuners. So they're basically modeled off of the Kluson. However, one thing that's very important to note here, they're vintage sized. So if you wanted to replace the tuners, you would either have to get the vintage size, which is a little smaller, or you'll have to remount larger holes in order to fit regular size tuners. The Epiphone here has the premium covered tuners, which are extremely flimsy and for the most part require almost a quarter turn before it actually grabs the string. Next, looking at pickups, I've added pickup covers here to the 490R and 490T pickups. They're very well balanced, a little hotter than some of the like more vintage style pickups, but they're very well balanced. They do represent a lot of the mids and the upper mids rather well, and they're definitely not too shrill. But for a lot of people, these are just good balanced pickups, but some people do enjoy swapping them out. The Epiphone has the Epiphone 700T and 650R uncovered pickups. They're rather hot pickups, not too crazy hot, but they're also hollow sounding. It's like they kind of lack the mids without sounding scooped. But I mean, you can definitely make these pickups work for you without any issue, but more than likely, if you're doing like a live set or doing recording, a lot of times you would want to change your amp settings if you were going from this guitar to this guitar. The Gibson has 2 volume and 2 tone with a 3-way toggle switch. It has the PCB rather than the like hand solder. It doesn't have CTS pots, it has Gibson pots. They are very responsive and they do work rather well. The Epiphone has 1 volume and 1 tone, where the potentiometers are basically the 10-cent no-name potentiometers, but again, they are rather responsive and shouldn't give you any issues. And the last thing I'll talk about here is the bridge. So the bridge system here, there's some trade-offs. I find that the the Gibson's, it has the lightning bar. So what we're looking at here is there's no way to really adjust the tension on the bridge, and it has that like the little notches there to like help you with intonation. You can't get it super tight for intonation. That's where I think it would have been better to ditch the lightning bar and go with the compensated wraparound, because that is a little more comfortable. Every now and then when you're bending, it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen every now and then. You'll hear a little, or you'll feel a little plink, and that's just because it's kind of slipped through the notches on the lightning bar. And then the Epiphone has the Epiphone lock tone tune-o-matic and stop bar, which is great because if you want to adjust tension, you either lower the stop bar to get more tension, or you raise it to get less tension. That's why a lot of people are crazy with the top wraps, because they like to have a little less tension in their playing, whereas I prefer to have more. The downfall here is the moment that you adjust the intonation on this bridge here, it'll start to buzz. So now that we've gone over the specs and similarities and differences and stuff like that, I want to talk about each individual guitar, like the feeling and everything like that. The Epiphone does sit rather comfortably in your lap when you're seated. However, you do have to note that the headstock is rather heavy, so it will kind of move a little bit. It's not SG neck dive kind of thing, but it will move a little bit. The fret ends here are rather nice. They're not sharp by any means, and it is actually a well-leveled fretboard. The control knobs are in a very nice position. If you're playing leads and you wanted to adjust either your tone or your volume, you can definitely reach them with your pinky. And of course, flipping that toggle switch to change from your pickup positions, definitely easy to do and only requires a little bit of practice. The body here is poplar and is definitely lighter than the Gibson. The Gibson seems to be a little bit more balanced because the body is mahogany and it's like millimeters thicker. It is heavier, so the headstock here is not heavier than the body, so it doesn't have a ton of neck dive. I mean, you're gonna get a little bit just for it to adjust to your body, but it's definitely comfortable to sit down and play, and nothing will get in the way there. The fret ends are very nice, definitely nothing sharp here. It is also a well-leveled fretboard. But this being the worn white, I do have to say, I call it the powdered donut finish. You are going to see some bleed from the rosewood onto the white neck. So if that is something where you're spending a little extra money on a guitar, where that's going to bother you, I would stick to a different finish. As far as the toggle switch access here, it is very easy to flick up and down as it is in the upper position here. So if you want to, while you're playing leads, switch your toggle switch, it's very easy to do. The 2 volumes and 2 tones, they're in a different location than on the Epiphone. So it does require a little more. You're not really gonna have that option of popping your pinky over all the time. You're gonna have to do a lot more practice in order to do it. But with the 2 volumes and 2 tones, there's a lot more blending issues, or blending possibilities that you can do. Big tip, if your lead sound, like if you're playing on the neck or if you're playing on the bridge and it's just not there, pop it into the middle position and dial back the volume on the neck. That usually, I find, gives it a little bit of a sweeter tone, and you get a little more control on a little bit of the low end. But there you go, there's the comparison between the Epiphone Les Paul Special Satin E1 and the Gibson Les Paul Special Tribute. Both of these have humbuckers. There's also an E1 Special Satin Melody Maker that has the single coil pickups in it. I'll probably rent that at some point to not really do a comparison, but just do some videos on it, because I am rather curious about that one. And this one here, you also have the option to get P90s in it. It really depends on what you're looking to do and your noise gate issues on, like if you're playing like gains and leads. P90s are fantastic and I think are overlooked a lot. But for most people, humbuckers are just give you a little more tonal options for playing cleans all the way up to metal. Not that P90s can't. And one final thing here, I have a dog in this fight. I really don't care. I don't watch these videos back. If I'm talking in a video, I hate watching it, so I don't watch these videos or anything like that. But I own the Gibson and I rented the Epiphone. So if you want to say that I skewed the Gibson against the Epiphone in hopes that I watch back and I go, yeah, kick the Epiphone's butt there, Gibson, that's great. I really don't care about that stuff. This is more like interest for me in doing a comparison because I find it neat. I really am not going to watch this video back in hopes that one guitar sounds better than the other. Thanks for watching.